Welcome, welcome, everyone. We are excited to get started. Come on in and join the fun. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Hakimia Jackson, CEO of Divine Power, Global Executive Coach and DI Board Advisor. And today I will be your moderator. Thank you all so much for joining us on this growth experience, specifically on the topic of leveling up your team, unlocking high performance through effective managers. And we are excited to be here. Hola, mi familia. Welcome to everyone. I'm dialing in from Atlanta, Georgia. And I would love to get to know you a little bit further because you're not just watching a webinar, y'all. Y'all know how it goes when I'm moderating. You are a part of the experience. That's right. Your insight and your presence today are just as vital as our thought leaders that we have with us today. So, in fact, throughout this experience, we'll be asking you all, our webinar community, to interact, not only with each other, but the panelists here as well. So right now in the chat, I'm gonna put you all to work. The panelists and myself want to get to know you a little bit better. So I need you to share 3 things with me: your name, where you're dialing in from, and what are you doing to level up your team in 2023. So share with me in the chat your name, where you're dialing in from, and what are you doing to level up your team in 2023. Is it rewards, L&D, coaching, technology? What is it? Training, Laura, thank you. Kim, I see you. Vanessa, hello from Phoenix. Stacy, training, L&D. I love what I'm seeing in the chat. Hi, Sarah. Hi, April, David, Chrissy, welcome to the experience. I love the interaction already. We want this energy to continue, okay? So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up in the conversation, specifically how we can expand our awareness for ourselves, our team, and our organizations, okay? So keep the momentum going, keep the chat flowing. I see you, Sonia. I see you, Neil. Kyla, welcome from Canada. Recognitions and rewards. Thank you, Claudine. Nora, Keepa, welcome from Lagos, Nigeria. Yes. Welcome all of my people. San Diego, Texas. DC, Angela, employee engagement. I love it. Kira, L&D. So don't hesitate to continue to share. All right. There are so many valuable comments we see in the chat. I also see, all right, L&D, Jessica, thank you so much. So just a quick reminder, if anyone wants the SHRM code, it'll be shown towards the tail end of the webinar. So don't just jump off when we're towards the end and after these leaders have shared valuable insight. But before we deep dive into the discussion, I want to introduce some heavy hitters in the industry that we have with us today. So with much respect, I introduce you to Lynette Phillips, Performance Coach at 15.5, Andrea Dumont, Chief Marketing Officer at Enboarder, Jason Lindstrom, CEO of Bucketlist Rewards. Please, panelists, starting with Lynette, share a bit more about your background and what makes this topic important to you.
Yes, thank you, Hakimia. I love you're just starting us off with your energy. Thank you so much. Yes, I am here as a representative with 15.5. So I'm a performance coach. I saw training and coaching as one of those modalities that came into the chat. So I got really excited about that. My prior experience before, I think, embarking on what I call my second iteration of a career. I've been in the workforce a little over 20 years, and I worked at the happiest place, the most magical place on earth. So I'm zooming in from Orlando, or really Apopka, Florida, northwest corner of Orange County. So yes, and it is very hot here, as my friend in Jacksonville said. Florida has not cooled down yet. So a lot of hospitality background, a lot of operations, project management experience, did a lot of variety of things, but my favorite function of leadership is providing coaching. When you get the opportunity to help others actualize their potential and see some things that maybe they didn't see, or new opportunities, new approaches, reframing, and go after what's, I think, reasonable, goals a lot of time, even if it includes a stretch goal. Sometimes it's like, we can do that. We can do the impossible, right? And I think Walt taught a lot of us that, and that kind of has carried with me in my personal and professional life. Personally, I'm a mom of 2, and I'm married to a great partner of 15 years who is an educator. So shout out to all of those heroes who really do wear capes. They are returning back to school here as we speak today. So thank those. If you see a teacher who's heading back or is back, just tell them, just give them some love. Tell them thank you for all that they do.
Yes, a lot of love there. Thank you, Lynette. Andrea, Jason, go ahead.
All right, I'll dive in. So my name is Andrea Dumont. I'm head of marketing at Enboarder. At Enboarder, we focus all about human connections in the workplace. And we focus on the concept of creating connections that transform your workforce into communities of commonality. And those commonality could be professional activities in terms of exercises and also badges and things of that sort that you've done, but also more personally, what do you do for your hobbies? What do you do outside of work? What inspires you every day to do what you do? And so we really work with teams within organizations to create, you have groups of people that perhaps like surfing, or you have groups that really love to cook, and creating those communities with your entire organization that spark motivation, momentum, and real high engagement and belonging. So that's what we are focused on. And for me, in terms of the learning and development, one of the things that I absolutely love is to see people who have been in my circle for learning and development and see them grow in their careers and watch them kind of have higher and higher positions or change in a second career, or perhaps and come back and work with me as well in different aspects of it. And I absolutely love it. So thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this. Really excited to have the conversation. And Jason, I believe over to you.
Thank you, Andrea, and lovely to be a part of this panel here. And I'm so excited to meet virtually everybody in the chat window and who's joined us today. I already see lots of cool ideas. I think these sorts of sessions are best done when it's a collaborative environment where everybody gets to participate. And already I'm seeing lots of cool ideas and cool shout outs. So I just double down on getting everybody else to participate. My name is Jason Lindstrom. I am the CEO over at Bucketlist Rewards. We are an enterprise rewards and recognition platform. And as a company, we're on a mission to help build the best cultures on earth. Personally, I'm also a dad. I got 2 little daughters, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, who may pop in. They're like little ninjas. They know when the doors closed, don't come in, but it's almost like a catalyst to enter the room. So you never know. And when it comes to this particular topic, helping to coach and build high performance team, like personally, I find it incredibly, it's something it's near and dear to my heart. I'm really passionate about helping unlock people's potential. And at the end of the day, creating a high performing team, I think that's the goal of any organization, because when you have that, not only do you have a super fun environment, but you can achieve outstanding results. So it's a real pleasure to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to learning from the other panelists.
Thank you so much, panelists. Excited to start the conversation. So as we all know, many companies have already received the wake-up call in this new age of work, the wake-up call to think about work, the workplace, and teaming in a new way, and then act on what is the most significant opportunity ever, which is to redefine how we work together within our organization. So these last 2 years have been a real challenge for some organizations and leaders, specifically around managing the constant change, whether it's disruption in supply chain, or talent retention, or increasing talent attrition in the job market, or even nursing corporate sicknesses like silo thinking, office politics, mistrust, and destructive conflict created, during this challenging time. And so we are excited to have you here just to get your thoughts on, all these things. Starting with Jason, how do you define a high performing team?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic question and a really great way to start. So I'm fascinated, as I mentioned earlier, about what makes a high performance team. And I found a study that I read a little while ago. It was done by Google, and they took an analytical and data driven approach to understanding what creates the highest performing teams. They called it Project Aristotle. They looked at over 100 different teams inside of Google. And the initial assumption was that it's more about hiring really smart people. And so, for example, maybe you bring a Rhodes Scholar, you pair them with an MIT engineering grad and some other really smart people. And that's how you create a high performing team. But when they dug into it, what turned out to be the most important part was how teams interacted with each other. And they actually identified 5 characteristics of the highest performing teams. And at the top of the list was psychological safety. basically where members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of one another. And I'd 100% agree with that summary. I think in my experience, the highest performing teams have a lot of trust, a lot of mutual respect. I think having a sense of humor is really important. It's not mandatory, but like we spend so much time at work, you might as well enjoy the experience, the roller coaster. And then ultimately, I think a high performing team, they really should be able to deliver extraordinary results as well.
It's interesting, actually, Simon Sinek, who everybody knows, did a TED talk about how we worked with the Marines. And I don't know if anybody, give me a shout out if you've seen that in the webinar chat, but he talks about this whole concept about what makes up a good platoon or a good team. And at first they went in with the same scenario, right? Saying, oh, it's the high performers, it's the strongest, it's the best. But what folks really ended up happening is it was all about trust. Right? They would rather be with that team of people that they trust. And they may not be the higher performers, but that's that psychological safety, that belonging, that concept of feeling like, okay, you've got my back, everything's good on that front, that it really allows people to be themselves, right? And feel like they can achieve things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just saw the TED Talk drop. So if you haven't seen that over yours, yes, it's a good
It's a fabulous one. And yeah, thank you, Stacy, for putting that in.
For me, so I have a literal definition that I struggle with actually, because I'm highly relational as a leader. Like 3 of my top strengths sits in that quadrant of relational, right? So Dr. David Wilkinson scrubbed through, I want to say around 4,200 studies. And then he was like throwing things out because, you know, that's what researchers do. They like to go, that's not valid, or that didn't have enough efficacy and not enough people. So when he said, when he really started to look at these leadership studies, he came up with, a high-performing team is a team that exceeds all reasonable expectations, right? So again, within reason, right, of what we can achieve, what we can do. We know there's certain things, but they produce extraordinary results, right? And brought that in. And I said, okay, how do I take that concept? And so in my definition, right, I'll take some of his and let it influence me, but I always take it back to those words here of like respect that's there, trust. And I always feel like that team exemplifies the ability to sustain the trust that's been built. Like they can build it back too if it gets violated, and they do it through those relationships, and they understand that as well. So I've always been like, okay, that's the very nice definition that sounds great in an academic journal, but really what does it look like, you know, in a workplace? And it has to be observable behaviors that we can see. And I actually love bringing in the word humor and reminding us that that this can be light. Sense, you know, in a way that we can show, let's lighten up, let's do this, and we can get it together and have some fun.
And Lynette and Jason, I appreciate your thoughts on this, and definitely in the chat as well, you know, hybrid, not hybrid, all remote, fully remote, whatever you want to call it. My goodness, you know, everything has changed so much. So how do you get that safety and that trust? Perhaps when you're not even in the same geographic region, you're definitely not in the office together, you miss that kind of camaraderie a bit, that people say why they're going back to the office, because they miss that, right? What are your thoughts on that in terms of that psychological safety aspect and how you bring that together?
Yeah, I can maybe share a quick experience on this, because we try to deliberately craft that into some of our meetings. And I'm also super curious to hear Lynette's thoughts on this as well. But typically if there's on a quarterly basis, we bring a lot of teams together. We're a fully distributed company. So some people are in office, some people are not in office. We got people all over the world. Periodically, we try to bring teams together in office, in person, but you don't actually have to have people in the same place to do this exercise. And whenever you do an offsite, it's a little more time to reflect and be thoughtful. And we have a pretty structured agenda where we take normally half an hour to an hour to kick things off. And it's kind of like a get to know your peers and colleagues, but also a trust building and a vulnerability session. And we have about 10 questions we run through. We start off with some softball questions, which are things like, hey, tell us about your past, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses? And then tell us about a really meaningful moment in your life, and maybe what was a highlight and maybe what was a low light. And if the leader goes first and they actually talk about something really meaningful that happened to them, maybe a true highlight like getting married, having kids, maybe it's a low light like experiencing the death of a loved one. When leaders go first, when they're super vulnerable, it makes it safe for everybody else to be vulnerable as well. And I've seen these sessions, and like the best ones, and I don't say this lightly, like the best ones, people go deep. And I've seen tears, I've seen like hugs, and it's an amazing way to bring people together. And I know a lot of people sometimes they're like, oh, you got to keep work life and personal life separate. But I think the best leaders, they see their employees, they see their teams as a whole person. And so you got to create these forums where people can be vulnerable, they can connect. And that's how you can really create high performing teams. And that's what's worked for us at our organization. But I'm super curious, Lynette, what's your experience been?
Well, working for an organization that focuses on bringing that research-backed approach. So how do you bring that to life, right? It's a very valid sentence, not just something that's innately in you and you go, I believe this. It's like there's studies that have shown about what that connection can do and about leaders exhibiting certain of those behaviors, right? Approaching things with a curiosity, or again, when they are vulnerable, especially in storytelling, right? And the opportunity. So obviously we have that actually at 15.5 built in called the Best Self Kickoff. So one of those things is guiding, customers and our clients that we work with in how to have those pieces, that it's an integrated approach. Who's the person behind the work? Right. So you can have a fun question like, who are you going to brunch with if you can go brunch with anybody, which mine is Michelle Obama, by the way. So if she has this and logged on, then set it up. But you can start, like you say, with those softball type questions. But one of my favorite ones that I think I have connected the most with many colleagues is how does stress show up for you? And it's interesting because I lean into two different spectrums. I either get very funny. This is where humor shows up for me. Like I just need to crack all the jokes, or I am so direct that it's like, she is about business. It's like, but people knowing that we can facilitate certain behaviors. Sometimes we say, is this the right meeting? Do we need to all reschedule? What's the energy in the room? What question is about to go unanswered? Because that space is really being cultivated. And so, and you can do that. Imagine that in our Brady Bunch boxes that we've all gotten used to over the course of having Zoom, Teams, whatever it may be. Think about meetings where it was where you can do all cameras off and voices, you're engaging other senses, and we're speaking to others who don't always have the energy to be on camera meeting after meeting after meeting. And so I think our workplaces, given what's there, we should be first and foremost thinking what drives connection, what draws people in, what ways are people communicating and advocating for the work that they're doing. Right? Are people speaking up? Are we acknowledging efforts? Are we speaking to our values? Are we, as a member of the leadership team saying, I worked with, Andrea, and I saw her bring to life great partnership. And that form of recognition really speaks to the behaviors we want to see, even though it's like, she's in another country. Her team, she said Australia earlier, India, we're here in the US. And so I do think that kind of combining that, saying, if I don't have that physical pieces, how do I do that in things that engage our other sentences, written communication, verbal sharing, starts of meetings. I think it sounds really, one of the interesting ways we did was we started asking people, what's your baseball walk-up song, if you're familiar with that terminology? And we put together some Spotify playlists so that you could just think about certain colleagues and connect on another way of like, well, what music engages you? And I've used that and brought that even into coaching. And I have cross-cultural teams and people are like, I like Bosnian rock. Yeah. With, US-based team members. So finding ways to connect. And it brings everybody together, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for asking. As you can see, I get excited about that stuff. Thanks for asking about that.
I'm sorry, I'm going to add one comment. I'm sorry, we're taking the conversation over. This is just so much fun to talk to.
You should have a moderator.
This is how it's supposed to be.
And, Jason and Lynette, I know you guys can really relate to this. It's like, I always want to catch people doing it right in the moment, to reinforce exactly what behavior we want to see. So catch them doing it right from a growth perspective of what they're working on as a development activity. Catch them doing it right in terms of the values of what we espouse as a company, and they're living it every day. You want to catch them right there and acknowledge it and be like, my goodness, that was an amazing job. I know you've been working on your public speaking initiatives. You did a wonderful job really presenting that. Well done, right? And that's also certainly tied to recognition, Jason, certainly.
No, I think that's an awesome example, like catching people in the moment. What I've always found fascinating about rewards and recognition, and which I've seen a ton of comments around, is that like being recognized is, I think, foundational and fundamental to being a human being. Like if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is like an assessment of what motivates people, down to the bottom, it's like things like food, shelter, and water. And right above that is to the desire to be appreciated, loved, and respected. And so whether you're an employee or a CEO, or a daughter or a son, everybody wants to be appreciated and loved for the work they do. And if you can do that and craft it in a way that's meaningful to the recipient, like you can lift them up, you can delight them beyond belief. And also, it's just, as you also said, Andrea, it's a fantastic way to bring your core values of your company alive. Because when a leader or a colleague recognizes a peer for doing good work and they weave in the company core values, people often, they want to model that behavior. They want a story told about them as well, and people learn through modeling. And so it's a simple thing, and it has just a huge number of really positive impacts inside the organization.
Yeah. I'm going to bring in a comment from the chat real quick that talked about what about those without public recognition. And that's one of the things that I think we have found in we are remote first, and we do get together and have in-persons, is that extra step to remember, like we literally have high fives built into the platform. Like I can send a private one, and like that consciousness to remember, or I don't know how that person likes to be recognized. I can go in their profile and that respect for that, and knowing that that means so much more, that I did it in the way that was meaningful. And I'm going to go back on Jason's word of meaningful to them, and like just taking note of that. And especially for leaders, being able to differentiate amongst your team. Some people want the whole band in the parade, like stop traffic, and others are like, please do not even say happy birthday to me out loud because I have a complicated relationship with my birthday, kind of, and that's taken into consideration what that means, how they're seen.
Great point.
Yes, you're getting a lot of great points in the chat. So thank you all for sharing. And so, my next question is, I would love to connect your experience with the audience experience. Just sharing a story on you working in a high performance team, and how did that, develop you as a leader? What were some of the amazing things, as well as some of the challenging things that you've learned in your experience?
I'll kick off because I went through probably a very similar Project Aristotle at one point in my career, where it was like, let's bring together those who do certain aspects of their operations really, really well. And we quickly realized that the room was somewhat crowded if we didn't get role clarity of like, where can your strengths be really? Because you've done a lot of good things. It was like a good top % of high potential of people who are ready for promotions as well, or getting into those conversations. And so as we kind of got involved with that, some people opted out and said, this isn't actually what I signed up for. And said, this room's really crowded. I don't know that I'll function well in it, or I don't know that my skill set will be maximized. Because again, maximizer is another strength. And so I think it took us a couple of months, going back to that forming, storming, norming, and performing. And when we really got clear on contributions, it was like, okay, the train could leave the station. So when you're bringing this talent together, you think, I want to focus in, and when you start bringing in like, a lot of high potentials, like they're just going to get it done. You realize you have to really understand to speak to people's strengths. And so we, tried different things, put people in different areas of responsibility, hone certain crafts. What were people needing to develop in for their next steps in their career, and that readiness? And I think that is what laid the foundation, because it was almost, we got really good at conflict resolution because you had a lot of strong opinions in the room. you know, you would move somebody that used to being the one leading voice in a team or one of two. Now you got 8 of those people in a room.
It's hard. Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
also to solve a complex problem. And
Yeah.
one really wants to be the solver of the complex problem.
Yep.
So we really had to go through that exercise. And I think coming out on the other side, I look at where many of us are, you know, in our career. You know, some have gone on to start their own firms, some have gone on, you know, executive positions even further and have stayed with the organization. You know, it became a place to flourish by going through some of that, but having to get really skilled at some of the traits of a high performing team.
Thank you for sharing, Lynette.
I'm interested though, like Andrea and Jason, I saw a little bit of like agreement. Tell me what your experience is.
It's so hard when you get a group of high performers in a room together, right? Whatever you want to call them, like at Enboarder, what do we have these things called connection cards that we use, and the connection cards really focus on kind of the next level of the employee profile, right? So it includes not only your name and what office you're in, all that good stuff. But more importantly, on the flip side of the card, it really focuses on you. So for example, you could, if you use DISC or Myers-Briggs, you could have, you know, I'm an ISTJ or whatever there, so that people understand how you like to receive communication, right? And to and from. You could put your professional credentials, your personal hobbies, things of that sort. You can request a mentor, right? In terms of getting out there into the organization and from a mentorship program and say, hey, I'm really interested in learning how to read a balance statement, let's just say, right? For a company. Great. How do I get a mentor that can help me with that specific scenario? So those connection cards really help you focus on those people in that team, whether they're high performers or not, because then they all have to take a minute at the beginning of getting together and saying, okay, wait a minute, you're an ISTJ, this is how you like to communicate. And they have to think for a minute and stop and think about their communication and think about their role in the leadership team and where they can add so much more variety than others. And how do we filter and give that information to the employees to empower them, right? And that's kind of what that concept is all about in terms of making that connection through the organization. Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit on 2 themes there. And like what I think I heard from Lynette and yourself is like, there's anytime you bring a new group of people together, there's a kind of forming, norming, storming, performing phase. And like, how do you integrate a group of high performers?
Yeah.
And if you have to lead that group of people, like what's the magic or the secret sauce? And I think you guys have both given some really great examples on different ways to allow people to communicate. I would also just layer into there maybe 2 thoughts or 2 concepts that have kind of worked well for us. One is when bringing together that group of people, I think it's important to have clarity and focus, and to have like a real, ideally, if you already have a really compelling vision in place, that can be a way to align people towards whatever the bigger mission and vision is for the organization or for the team. And and if it's stated simply and it's supported by really good company values, that those provide like a baseline and some rules on how that group can come together and achieve great results. And then just something we started with just recently, we write 3-year visions at our organization. And then once that's done, we write another 3-year vision. So it's kind of an ongoing process. We wrapped up our last 3-year vision, which I actually wrote myself. I really enjoy that type of work. But with the next 3-year vision, because the team's kind of bonded at this point, rather than me writing it in isolation, I involved at the last company retreat. We flew everybody to town, and we did about a 2-hour session where we provided some like loose guardrails at the top. Like, here's roughly what we're thinking of over the next 3-year journey. And then we broke people up into cross-functional teams, and we had them present their vision for the company. And it was kind of scary because like the intent was to get everybody thinking about what we want to achieve together and to get deep buy-in and alignment. And these cross-functional teams would get up in front of the company and they present for about 15 minutes their bullet point list of where they want to go as an organization. And there was a surprising amount of alignment between the groups, and also a ton of new ideas surfaced that I on my own never would have figured out. And I could tell already in the room what was happening is people were getting so excited for the shared and collective vision of what the company could achieve together. And then most surprising of all is I'm a pretty ambitious individual, but some of the goals they're setting were like, I was like, you think we can do that? Like it was resetting the bar to new levels. And so I think the vision can come from the top down, and then just as I've just recently discovered, you can align people and get them fired up, and get that vision to come from the bottom up as well, and they both work. And the more alignment and excitement you have around the vision, I think the more people, I'm blending so many metaphors now, the more you can get them rolling in the right direction. I think that's just a really powerful tool to bring people together and get them to function at a really high level.
But I love that, Jason, because they're a part of it. They have some skin in the game. There's another metaphor for you, right? There we go. We'll just throw them all out. So they have an opportunity to be heard, right?
Yeah. They're taking ownership within a direction of where hopefully, right, the organization should go. And I just want to pull out a couple of comments about accountability. I know, we talked about trust and connection and all these great characteristics, but accountability for leadership as well as, the other performers on the team is very important as well. So thank you so much. I think it was Maria and who also made the comment regarding accountability. And so, from your perspective, and I know we've kind of, shared a lot here, but I want to hone it back in. What's the best way, from your perspective, to develop and empower different levels of managers? We are now in an era where it's a multi-generation workforce and managers are at different levels. From your experience, how have you done it?
This is so near and dear to my heart, because I got to tell you, forget the hybrid and the remote, whatever it may be. This concept of the generational workforce is fascinating to me in terms of from a learning and development, from a professional development. And, actually, we did a survey recently. I think it was about 900 employees around the world. And we said, okay, identify yourself like baby boomer, Gen X, Gen Z. Tell us how you like to develop, like what would a corporation do for you? And it was interesting. Gen Z and millennials were focused more on peer learning, right? And getting those mentors. The Gen Z was all about formal career development. A lot of people talked about Myers-Briggs and DISC and really skill building and going to classes to do so. And the baby boomers, surprisingly, well, I guess not surprisingly, were more focused on health and wellness and planned activities that they can manage in their schedules, right, in terms of the development. So we took those concepts and we're like, all right, well, interesting. So if that's how they like to receive information, how do we build programs around that to support that concept, right? Because if your goal is to develop those skills, create connection and belonging, ultimately, you would hope that the result of that will be higher engagement, more buy-in, Jason, like you were saying, into the goals and the missions, more tenacity to go above and beyond, right? The normal job. And so really, it's important for professionals like ourselves and the learning development professionals to not have, again, one size fits all, but really look at tracks. And I think that's the big important thing for me, is like looking at all the different generational pieces and understanding how can I help them build their skills in the way they want to receive information.
I want to say, Andrea, Mike says, don't forget about Gen X. Everyone else says, no, we don't forget about you. We love you. Okay?
Sorry about that, Mike.
I have a little bit of a different take on this, and I think I get hung up on that word empower a little bit a lot of times, right? Because then it's an assumption, right, that I'm distributing it, that I'm sharing it, and I think there's always this misconception at times where, especially amongst levels of leadership, it might be, I wish they would do this, or this group of managers would do this, and then if we were all sitting down to a nice dinner, it would be like, I didn't know I could.
Yeah.
Right? Was it really explicit? And so I think
point.
one of the first things of development and really empowerment when you're talking about it, especially in talking about high performance, right? The ability for people to make creative decisions, to take risks, going back to that psychological safety, right? To set ambitious goals. There's a lot that cultivates around that. I think there really has to be an open conversation. What is that manager's role? Also, what's their decision-making authority? Now, that word authority jars me sometimes though too, right? Where you're like, but you realize giving someone the permission, the explicit, like, let's talk about it, right? I'm going to look to you in the room to guide this, to bring together others, to make a final decision, which sometimes is what hangs us up in corporations, right? So I do think that if you want to get to how do I develop that skill and empower others, I do need to look at what level someone has in the organization, but have I thought about and cultivated that in our ongoing conversations over time? Maybe they don't have it on day one of being newly promoted, but what does that look like as they're scaling their, their experience, their influence in the organization, how their authority grows. And so that is, to me, what I think is the bigger piece that has to happen in skills and talents when you want to talk about being able to empower leaders. Someone may trip up, someone may forget a little bit and get overzealous at times, or want to roll something out and just leave someone behind. That's coachable though. I think that's part of the game. I'm going to have to give feedback on that. I'm going to redirect some behaviors.
Hard, yeah.
But I'd rather do that than to say, gosh, I'm performance managing you because you got stuck and I expected you to do something and you didn't act. So that to me is the trade-off. If you really want empowerment, is to be very, very clear. What am I empowering this person to do? And I got to release that. Once I've said it and let it go out of my head and my heart, I got to let them go do their thing that I've entrusted them to do.
Awesome. I have maybe two ideas on this topic that actually connect nicely into the next concept of empowering your leaders and managers. And they're both kind of tactical. We've rolled them out and had a decent amount of success with them. The first was we have like kind of new managers and some really established managers and leaders, and we wanted to put together a leadership development curriculum and program. And so we started by surveying the group, and we had a bunch of ideas that they could vote on, and they could also recommend their own topics. And some of the topics that floated to the surface was how to have a difficult conversation, becoming a better communicator and presenter, and understanding finances. And interestingly, I'm a part of some other CEO groups, and there was a session on having difficult conversations. This is a group that meets, once a month throughout the year. That was one of the most popular conversations for both like senior executives at our company. Whoa, was that well attended? Yeah. Because having they're called difficult conversations because they're hard to have. It's like
exactly.
Yeah.
And nobody ever trains you how to have them until you start having them, and you're like, holy cow, what did I get into? So spot on. It's very hard. No kidding.
Anyways, we're rolling out this curriculum, and the difficult conversation piece is it's not just like delivering content, but role playing is really, really important. What we found is like when you get to try the scenario on in a safe environment, it really sets people up for success for when in your leadership career, it will 100% happen. And in fact, I think the best leaders, they race to conflict, meaning they don't pick fights. They just, when they see conflict emerging, they address it quickly. When they see a problem emerging, they're quick to pounce on it. And then one other kind of tactical idea is this whole concept of mentorship. Because again, there's different types of leaders, and in a high performing team, like maybe you're leading somebody who's smarter than you with way more domain expertise than you. And you're like, how do I support this person? And in my experience, you can often lead by asking that person questions and getting their advice and guidance on what they think they should do. But if they're interested in personal development and becoming better at what they do, I think mentorship is a fantastic way to lift almost anybody up. And I personally have a mentor, and what I've observed is you select somebody who's achieved the thing you want to do in 3 to 5 years out. Ideally, they have a playbook, so they've dealt with the difficult situations you're going to deal with, and then you try to pull them into your organization, or sometimes these mentors exist inside your company as well. And you can kind of package up some curriculum, create some recurring meetings and schedules to enable mentorship to happen inside of an organization. There was a study done by Gartner that said the average ROI of a mentorship program is over 600%. And I'd 100% agree with it. I think having really smart people to lift up your smart existing leadership team is a fantastic tool that that you guys might want to consider if you're not already doing it. So those are my two tactics: mentorship and the leadership development program.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jason. I want to go to the community question, specifically when we all were talking about safety, psychological safety, and trust. One of our community members said, how do you build a sense of psychological safety and trust when companies are downsizing? So let's be real on the environment that we're currently in, right? And the struggles that our leaders here are experiencing. What do you do in those instances?
You know, again, being very transparent with everybody to be helpful. We had a downsize this year, you know, and it wasn't a big one, but it was affected people. And again, we have people all over the world. So people were hearing the information at different times in different contexts and what departments they were in. And it made it for a very challenging scenario. And I think we did a survey after the downsizing to say, you know, what did we do well? Where could we have changed things? The things that really worked well was just the down and out honesty and transparency about the business, where we are, why we had to make the decision we're making, and what's going to allow us to move forward, right? So it put a bookend at the end of the scenario of people have that safety to be like, okay, they handled the situation, they understand where we're going, now we're all going to move on, right? And so we did a lot of communication that day. We did town halls. Our CEO was up at all hours of the day and night doing personal calls with offices and to help them understand. And having that executive leadership team really own parts of it was really important. So the best thing I can recommend there is don't try to fluff it. Don't try to just erase it, right? Acknowledge that people perhaps have lost co-workers, they've lost friends. They're feeling bad for them. You have to be empathetic, but also you need to move on and get going with the business as quickly as you can.
I think Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety, right? Being vulnerable first and often. So sometimes when it is, you know, this is my third economic downturn, and it's not placate or anything, and say what experiences have been, this is what I do have answers to, and owning I do not have a clear answer for that yet. I am going to need to respond back and doing the follow-up. So when leaders can show up in that authenticity of I'm also involved in what's happening around me while I'm facilitating this, I think creates that human connection, that there's another human in front of me. I think understanding members of your team, that everybody may respond in different ways, right? It could be, again, if I'm very new in the workforce, it could be just generationally, I could be re-entering the workforce, I could become a new parent, and this, you know, brings up something differently. So knowing who may need to attend a little separate one-to-one versus, hey, this person was in a team meeting, you give them their space, they'll come to you as they need them. So I think having those types of understandings as well. And I think getting to a point where to move things forward, you may have to go back and define role clarity, because someone's position might have been there yesterday and the first thought is, who's doing that work?
Yep, exactly right.
Real way.
What time?
Who's taking responsibility for that, right? Did anybody think of that? And yes, it was thought of, right? It is a war room, I would say, when you start thinking about doing reductions in workforce. It's not a room no one enjoys being in there, right? So let's think about it from that standpoint. But will every detail be covered? Not necessarily. So as those of us who are on the team, who are missing a team member, the care, the compassion, and maybe the breath, the 24 hours we need to give it to of like, unless this was really mission critical, we'll come back together. What can we figure out? What do we scrub? What do we reprioritize? And that's where leadership, a strong leader that can come back in and set that ground when it was a little bit shaky and come back and say, let's reprioritize. Are we clear on what goals are? Can let somebody say no to something in the moment. You can recover, I think, and get on the path to moving forward. It's going to take different people, different times, but I think you can do it in a healthier way that can keep your workforce engaged.
Great.
Jason, any thoughts?
I just like two quick ones. Like I think Lynette, Andrea nailed that answer, by the way, around, and I just doubled down on the honesty and transparency side of it. Like the two tidbits I layer into it is, if you're the senior leader in charge of the group, like CEO, own it. Like do not blame, like own that situation, even if it was market factors that are out of your control. Like you have to take account, like we were more optimistic than we should have been about what was happening in the market. There was a change in the market. We didn't take into account for, like own the situation 100%. And the other thing that it's been a huge learning for me over the years is when you exit people from the company, say in a layoff, what people are really looking at is how you exit that person is what they think might happen to them in the future as well. So if you do it with dignity and grace and honesty and transparency, it's not a fun thing to do, but you're actually building trust in those tougher moments. So own it, and just be aware of that second knock-on effect as well.
I think that's absolutely right, Jason, because it's not only that, like creating alumni networks and being able to have that joint feeling of the brand and the empathy, but also you're going to have boomerang employees, perhaps, when things do start coming better. So you want to leave them with that respect and compassion. So if an opportunity does come back up, they're like, absolutely, I'm ready to come back.
Yeah, right. You don't have to be enemies in the downsizing part. And I like what Sarah says. She says, our philosophy is to treat people on the way out with as much respect as your new hires. I love that. And so our next question is, can you speak on how do you get buy-in for leadership development training for managers who think they don't need it or don't have it or don't have time for it?
That's a bit of a red flag.
Sorry. That's a loaded question.
It's
real.
Oh
my Lord.
It's real. Look, these are real. We want to speak to the real, right? So this is what's going on in their environment. And look, Lisa says this is so common, and she's absolutely right.
100%.
Who's taking this one first? As the coach who wants people to opt in, maybe I'll go last. And
I'll speak to it, and I by no means have the perfect answer, because I agree it's incredibly common, and it's also very difficult to have that insight into yourself, right? Sometimes, and I know this isn't for everybody, but I will tell you what I have done in my career is I've taken the bullet a little bit, and I've gone in and I have had the wherewithal to be able to say, in this situation, it would have been extremely helpful to understand how you could have communicated better, or understand how you could have approached the situation different, and be able to have those conversations. Now, I understand, and I'm sure it's going to be in the chat, there's ramifications if I do that. I understand that. But sometimes if you really want to get to the heart of that matter, right? It's really being able to have that relationship with your manager to do so, because you can communicate in a way that's not offensive. It's not attacking. It's a conversation that you want to have in terms of how you work together and how you want to work together as a team. That puts the onus more on a conversational style versus looking at somebody saying, holy cow, they need a lot of work, right? And in terms of looking at something like that. And I know it's hard to do. I'm not saying it's not, but kind of framing it in that way makes it a much more open dialogue. Jason, what do you think?
No, I think like that's great advice and commentary. Yeah, right? But I would layer into it too. It's funny, that mentorship thing I was mentioning earlier, that's coaching, that's leadership coaching at its finest. And a lot of people say yes to mentorship, but they might not be as keen for the leadership coaching. The other thing, the way I always frame it as well, is two big things. If you want coachable people, if you want to build the coach people, hire coachable people, because some people are not naturally keen to participate. But I think there's so many stories about how the world's best leaders and some of the best companies, the senior leadership, always adopt coaching. And if you're into this as a topic, the best book on coaching I've ever come across is called $1 Trillion Coach. It's by this guy named Bill Campbell. And Bill Campbell was the coach to Steve Jobs, the CEO at Apple. He's a coach to Eric Schmidt, the CEO at Google. And like, if these CEOs have a coach of these billion-dollar companies, certainly a middle or senior director inside your company could benefit from coaching as well. So just like storytelling, like saying that, of course, nicely, like packaging it in a way that people listen to, but there's the idea that everybody can be lifted up and perform better. I find storytelling and mentorship are two great ways to help people elevate their game and to develop them as individuals. But Lynette, what are your thoughts?
My first is readiness for this. So you find this out, and there's variation of time. Sometimes it's just not, I don't have the capacity. Something's going on personally. So like, those types of things, but really prompting readiness within your teams, right? That growth is ongoing as we move forward. My take on it is having that larger vision of where are we even headed so we can prepare. If we know we're rolling out new initiatives in 2024, and it's going to be critical to give feedback, we should be actually doing this in October. And it's like, why are we talking about feedback? Why are we practicing this as a skill? Because it's now ready. You've been getting some exposure to it. Because when it's reactive, I might have some barriers up. I might feel like, ugh. And so you are now, there's this tension that training will help and support. And so for me, I always think of it as training should be that preventative measure, right? It's the training for the marathon. Training needs to become my 3-mile run, my 5-mile run, my half marathon. As I really look at my strategic outcomes that I'm trying to build out, what would my team need to do what I'm going to be asking of them or what they're shaping with their work? Now that's a little bit different, right? Because we're preparing some readiness. And then some stuff may be facilitated by external factors. Did we all think we were going to be having very open, honest conversations about DEIB in 2019? We did not. That got shaped by our external environment and an urgent need. Many people were advocating for it, but it was in response to. So that will always still be there. So I think when having that conversation with that person, first, how do you engage things like individuals with their mentors or their leaders and help them point out from a self-awareness standpoint, what would prompt their readiness? Maybe where they're at today is not ideal. What prompts your readiness and gets you into the position? What's the best learning environment for you? And then they're like, none of it. Okay, then we're going to have a different conversation because again, we're all learning and growing in various different ways. So that's what I would like organizations to see and begin to prepare and think about as learning as a strategy, not just the Band-Aid for the solution. Hey, I need to send this person to charm school and I want to send them off to a couple classes rather than, hey, this is intentional. And this is like something that you can carry into, personally, professionally, into any type of environment. And by the way, what's in it for you? We should probably be shaping this around how you want to grow as a leader. I love when Jason said his team said, what's our top topics? What's really important to us as a learning cohort? Man, that opens up a lot, right? How do you build experiences where their buy-in is there from the beginning?
Yes, absolutely. And so with that, we are at the time of the webinar where we would love for you all to connect with these amazing organizations. And so they've spent time with you sharing their thoughts, their wisdom, insights, and best practices so that you could be better in your organization and continue to thrive. And so with that, we're going to have a poll pop up. Please identify which organization you want to connect with. But most importantly, we're also going to have a quick little commercial break so that these organizations could share more about them as well as their amazing products that they have to offer. Thank you so much for completing the poll. All right, who's up next? 15.5.
Fantastic. Yes. As the representative of 15.5, I am so excited to share that we are a holistic performance management platform that is focused on measuring and prioritizing HR outcomes. And we have a combination, right? We are software, we are training, and we are coaching.
Hello. So for us, I've talked a little bit about Enboarder in terms of really focusing on how we bring connection to life across your organization. And we talked a little bit about some of the research we've done, the connection cards, our ability to kind of help drive connection in cohorts as well. So would love to speak with you or anybody in your organization who's looking to create connection, belonging across your organization.
All right. Hey, folks, new face here. Thank you so much to the panel and the community for an incredible discussion. I certainly enjoyed it. I've interacted in the chat just a bit. And so to introduce myself, I'm Asia Smith, she, her pronouns. I'm an executive leadership coach and community catalyst at ThinkHuman. And we're a manager training and leadership development company. And we have cohort-based training programs that leverage behavior science and focus on creating lasting behavioral change over time. We support HR and L&D leaders with implementing community-centered and experiential-based leadership programs for leaders at all levels that are built to support a culture of learning and belonging. Some of our core programs include Leader Lab, Mini Lab, Grow Lab. We also have public courses that are available for managers. I put a link in the chat to a resource that I'll share again. It's our Do More with Less, Building Your L&D Strategy Guide. As far as just the challenges that organizations are facing, we're certainly privy to it. And I love how training and leadership development that came up as tools and strategies to be able to drive your organization forward. So I'll reshare that in the chat, as well as my meeting link. If you're interested in learning about ways to bring ThinkHuman to your organization, would love to connect. And so thanks again to the panel, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week, and wishing all the best as you grow your organization towards the high performance that you're seeking.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the session, the question is asked, what are you doing to create a great work environment? And a bunch of you said rewards and recognition. And that's exactly what Bucketlist Rewards does. We help connect employees to one another. We help break down silos. We help create high performance cultures that ultimately results in some of the world's best teams. If you're interested in learning more about Bucketlist Rewards, just please feel free to click that button. And if you ever want tips or advice on the topic of rewards and recognition, feel free to connect with one of our team members, or of course, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love meeting coaches, leaders, and I love sharing any advice I can. And I'm really excited that everybody's able to join today as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you all so much for your time, and thank you for still sticking with us. Remember, you'll get your SHRM credit code at the end. We're not done yet, so we really do appreciate you staying. And so with that, we would love to close out with just the key takeaway. What's one thing that you would like to share with the audience today regarding high performance teams, starting with Andrea?
It takes work, everybody. You got to be engaged as a leader, right? This is not like you're going to get a bunch of high performers sitting at your table. And I think you lead by example, and you really engage them in terms of what their development looks like, and you take an active role in helping them get where they want to be. So don't sit back, lean into it, enjoy it, and enjoy the ride, and watch those people develop over time.
Jason, Lynette?
Yeah, I think Andrea set really good context there. I'd layer in there that it's a process. It's not like an end state. So enjoy the journey. And high performance teams, you're going to have high moments, you're going to have low moments, and just enjoy the roller coaster. And also, like, there's so many resources out there, whether it's mentorship, whether it's books. Don't feel like you have to solve this question on your own. A lot of these issues have been solved before by other fantastic leaders. So looping outside of resources, it could cut your development times in half, if not faster. And I hope you enjoy the experience as well. Lynette?
Yes, I'll close with the hard work is the hard work, right? You are entrusted with teams, and your leaders that you're developing are entrusted with the care and the performance of individuals. And so that really is the hard work. Many of us can do the technical job, and we would love to do that. We could do it in our sleep, but they are really doing some of the most challenging. So I highly encourage cultivating communities for them to grow, to learn, to develop. I will double down on that mentorship message, because it can feel very, very, especially as people go up in their career, that they are doing this on an island, by themselves, with no one coming to rescue them. And so if you can keep them primarily focused on what that function of that role is, and why it's so important, and why them bringing those certain skills and abilities and competencies about care and support for their team, and then the rest will sort itself out. We will figure out the process. We will get it documented eventually in the system. The guru card will get updated. Like all the challenging things happen, but the hard work is the hard work.
Yes, it is. And so thank you all so much for making the time investment to fellowship with us today. And so just walk away with activating your community, playing an active role, enjoying the journey, and making sure that you continue to walk in purpose. Thank you again. Blessings. Bye.
Hey, Lynette, whereabouts are you based out of, geographically speaking?
Oh, Orlando, Florida. So when I saw the magic on there, how amazing.
Oh, right. Yeah, they're fantastic to work with. They're super cool. They're all about making the dreams come true, for sure. Yeah. What's the weather like down there right now?
I got in my car yesterday. It said 103.
I'm glad I'm not home.
Right? Tampa Bay area.
Yes, I am glad I'm not there. A little cooler up here.
Yeah. Sophia, you got everything you need?
Yep. Let's end the webinar now. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, that
Thank
was
you.
great. Woo! Thanks, folks.
All right.
We did it. Great